Good afternoon. Welcome to Eretz Israel. I'm Avaram Shira, overlooking the valley where once King David met Goliath, as he's called in Hebrew, and it looks like a pretty peaceful place. It's hard to imagine 50,000 men going at it after each other with swords and spears and shields, but, well, that's history. But humanity is changing. Humanity is learning about the obsolescence of war. Now, there's a war that goes on inside the mind when there's no war outside the mind. When you have external wars, they seem to occupy our attention. But when the external war is mostly on in pixels on all the screens, it's not as compelling as the one where you're running from missiles and tanks. But there's a war also going on inside us, and that's the war of renewal, the war of the soul, in its battle with the obstacles that are placed in front of us to create the opportunity for growth. To create the potential for spiritual growth, we need to have obstacles. So we're holding today in Torah 76 in the fourth paragraph, and it begins, Al-Kem b'chol yom. Therefore, every day we need to renew our mind. As is written, Chadashim leBokarim Rabbah Munatecha. Right, we'll be renewed in the morning because your faithfulness is great. As it is also written, that God renews every day the works of creation. The works of creation is the structure of how God contracts infinite light into finite vessels in order for us to be able to exist here. The renewal of the mind, which is the idea of receiving a new mind, because each new drop of mind power changes our mind and becomes different, drop by drop. And then the person's mind gets greater and stronger, more powerful as he goes. And this is the idea of sight. The mind grows with sight, which is a very interesting idea if you think about it. I mean, like if a person can't see, that means their mind can't grow. Obviously, we know that's not true. There are many great sages who were blind, and they were masters of their generation. But the connection between sight and intelligence is undeniable. Because the knowledge of the mind depends on sight. As they say, seeing is believing. Well, that's believing. But seeing is knowing is the way that we learn things, through either seeing a picture or seeing a book or seeing a demonstration or seeing a movie. It's our seeing that is producing the most amount of learning because we're taking in the most amount of information at one time. That no person knows something that he sees clearly, as if he sees it in his eyes, with a very crystal vision. In other words, inner imagery is not far from the Torah of Chassidut and Kabbalah, that we close our eyes in order to see. And that practice becomes an essential place to begin the inner journey. Close the eyes and to begin to see. Now, כמו שכתוב, ותקפחנה עיני שניהם, that Adam and Eve's eyes were open. Perush Rashi al Shem HaChokhmah, right? It's on the name of wisdom. And as it is brought by Rabbi Nachman in another place, there are two powers in sight. The two powers that are included in the ability to see from this paradigm. A person whose eyesight is good can see from far. And he doesn't need to get so close to the thing he's trying to see. But someone whose sight is not so powerful, each person, according to this power of sight, will determine his ability to learn from sight, and how far away he can be from the thing to see it and understand it. Again, Gavot Hashem, so too in serving God, יש מי שמוחו צח ויכול להתפלל There's a person whose mind is clear and pure. He can pray and learn without any extra efforts. He just opens up the book and understands as he reads and goes, or prays clearly with the heart. There's a person who needs to elevate his mind before he starts to speak. In other words, if our thought is kind of dampened and quieted, then we really need to first elevate our thought in order to be able to speak. When a person speaks before he gets the thought clearly in his mind, you know what happens? He stumbles over his words. And he will not have thought behind his speech. This is the idea of after those things that happened to Abraham. This is the limited consciousness, constricted. And this is all the idea of judgment. The judgment comes from our restricted consciousness. This is someone whose mind is very pure. He has expanded consciousness. And what is the look of expanded consciousness? Well, it's not sitting on a mountain eating a bowl of rice. I'm sorry. It is showing mercy and kindness to the rest of God's creation. Now, it doesn't mean that sitting on a mountain and eating a bowl of rice won't help you be kind and merciful to others. It could. As our sages taught, though, that the great is the idea of knowledge because it was given between two of God's names, that God, El, the Almighty, is a God of knowledge. El, who chesed, and the name El is attributed to the sphera, the power source called chesed, kindness. Loving kindness. This is the kindness of Hashem all day long. Yom hu rachamim. And the day itself is an act of God's mercy to have a day. If you think about it, what would happen if tomorrow the sun didn't come up and the next day and the next day? We'd start to really worry. As it is written, Rachamecha Rabbim Hashem, your mercy is very abundant. But it's impossible to come to a true, pure mind until he comes to complete teshuvah, return to Hashem on his sins. As it is written, Umal Hashem et levavecha, and God circumcises the heart. Targumo, Hashem yati pshut libach. Hashem pushes out the foolishness of the heart. Ubi ezet teshuva nemar. What tshuva we talk about? Tshuva me'ahava, the tshuva that comes from love. Shelo yesher shum roshen klal, that there will be nothing left of the evil or the negative or the constriction of consciousness. That it will only be good, it will only be expanded. Amar Chazal, as our sages taught, Shuvu banim shovavim. Come back, sons, you wild ones, erpeh, and you will be healed. Mishuvatchem, shuvatam, and from your returning you will be healed. In other words, from the thing that causes us to go away. Kashay shovavim mashma ikara below shum roshim. That from the beginning they had lacked an impression to return from. Verpeh mashma, and the idea of God healing those people that come back. Mashmash yesher roshan, there should be an imprint of the return on the person. That when you say you're sorry to Hashem, to come back to Him, there needs to be an impression that stays with the person. And that impression is very valuable. But when you do it from love, kan me'ira, or you do it from awe, ki me'ahava, but when you do return to God with love, there is no impression left in the mind of the fall that we've had. And this person has a pure mind, and he can pray without going deeply into the nature of the words. And every day such a person can renew his mind. So you see, the renewal is really a day-by-day process. וזה פירוש הפסוק ואחר דברים האלה, פירוש אדם שהוא תמיד בשווה, a person who is always in in a not an elevated state of desire, he doesn't reach this level of renewal of the mind. He's in the constricted consciousness. He's in the idea of judgment, the dinim, the constricted forces. And that's, like the Rebbe said, an aspect of after those things. And afterwards God tested Abraham. That is to lift up the level of the constricted consciousness, which is the idea of judge, or judging. And Avraham is the source power, of course, the sphere of chesed, that will give us the power, that will enable us to come back with love. Shehu bechinat ahava, which is the idea of love. Ki al yedei nashuva teshuva me'ahava, by doing tshuva with love, we zochin lamochin de gadlut, we get an expanded consciousness, shehem bechinat chasadim urachamim, which is a kindness and mercy. V'yu Elohim nisa et Avraham, and this is the idea of God testing Abraham. He tests us in order to expand us. This is certainly the case with Abraham. Sha'al yedei bechinat Avraham minasim marimim et amochin dekatnut, that through this test of Abraham, that the mind is lifted up from its smallness. Shehem bechinat Elokim, which is the judgments. Zeh mochin dekatnut, this is the great-mindedness. Zeh pirush hazor hakadosh misitra diomina mocha chivara. From the right side, we have the right brain, which is shiny as silver. Perush midat ahava naseh sechlo tzach v'kesef kakesef v'az daika uktiv zer Avrahamu avi. The seed of Abraham, my beloved, ki hakoach hanikra zer Avraham. The power itself is called the seed of Abraham. That power of the renewal of the love, aho avi, the one that is beloved by me. God says, shehi midat ahava, which is the idea of love. Shemidat zot ba l'sechel tzach. Because that idea of love, when it gets to the mind, it comes into a pure mind, and then it has real power to cause change. And that, my friends, is the end of the Torah 676. Now, the next Torah 77, we're going to do tomorrow. V'ayah Hashem lemelech al kol haaretz, and God will be king over all the world that day. Listen to what he says. That the general principle is that everything that we do in prayer or learning, our purpose is already stated for us. We want to reveal that God is king. And that's a pretty Jewish idea. That's what we do all Rosh Hashanah and a few other days of the year. So let's come back tomorrow, and this is a very short Torah, but we'll be able to hopefully glean something very important from that. And as in all of Rabbi Nachman's Torah, it's a staircase to another realm of ourselves, and another realm of the Creator of ourselves. God bless you all. Have a great day.